How many people are dying for lack of an encouraging word?
How can he have so much sympathy and empathy for like incel dudes, right? How do you have that level of fucking sympathy for those, right? Which I have some level of sympathy as well, and I talk about it all the time. But then when it comes to like a trans person, you're like, no, what your doctors are doing are butchering you.
I've got to wrap it up. I don't want to, but I have to. I want to ask you just quickly, the film director Olivia Wilde has a new movie out, which she says is based on you, this insane man, this pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community. Incel being these weirdo loner men who are despicable in many ways. Is that you? Are you the intellectual hero to these
32
people?
months got me through my marriage.
Sure, why not?
Own it.
People have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. What a terrible thing to do that is. Thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice.
It's making you emotional.
Let me tell you something. That's not a normal way to talk about this sort of thing.
Feeling primal AF, brother.
This man, there's something severely wrong with his brain chemistry. It's just it. That's it. Like, that's crazy. Too much meat, man.
I'll talk about that.
Well, God, it's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are. And certainly many young men are in that category. And you get these casual insults, these incels. What does it mean? It's like, well, these men, they don't know how to make themselves attractive to women who are very picky, and good for them. Women, be picky. That's your gift, man. Demand high standards from your men. Fair enough.
But was fucking crazy.
All these men who are alienated, it's like they're lonesome and they don't know what to do, and everyone piles abuse on them.
When she said that, Olivia Wilde, it stung you, didn't it? I saw the
by
reaction.
that time, that as far as
This is why Andrew Tate was so dangerous, dog. After a certain point, like when your brain is so irreparably harmed by the benzo plus all meat diet, even the most diehard incels are gonna look at a dude who's crumbling and crying and shit and go, yeah, that's too much for me, dog. I think that's a little bit too much. You're crying, that's weird, you know what I mean? Whereas Andrew Tate at least I'm a top G, I never cry, crying is for pussies, in a weird way. He's not toxic enough, you know what I mean?
As critiques go, that was kind of low level. I mean, once I got painted as Red Skull, magical super Nazi, that was kind of the end of the insults. There's no place past that.
Not me,
So
say.
when Olivia Wilde made those comments, the first thing I did was go look at the preview for her movie, which I quite liked. I thought I would go see that movie probably, and perhaps I will. It didn't really bother me. My
Bro, you're crying, dude. You are crying. What the fuck?
My family and I talked about it right away, and we were able to respond to it with some degree of humor, which then people completely misunderstood. I said I hope that, that if I had to be played by someone, Chris Wilde, he's a very good-looking man, and so that seems all right, And then I said something like, I hope he gets my fashion style choice right when he plays me, and it was a joke. All that was a joke.
I mean, you've been so controlled today, and yet in that brief moment, you got very emotional. Why?
It's really something to see.
He's crying for the incels, man, the disenfranchised.
Constantly. How many people are dying for lack of an encouraging word? And how easy it is to provide that if you're careful. Give credit where credit is due. And to say,
damn, they're zooming on his face, dude. Nerds on the internet are the most oppressed, marginalized group, especially nerds on the internet that fucking turn around and say that black people deserve less and they're getting too much of the podium and shit. Those are the people that, are the most marginalized. Why are they marginalized? Because they can't even say their ideas openly. Their video games are being taken away from them. Okay? Their video games are being taken away from them, where the video games now feature black characters. You know what I mean? Female characters. Back in the day, video games were not political. Now they got political characters like that. It's really
you're a net force for good if you want to be.
How can he have so much sympathy and empathy for incel dudes, right? And talk about them as though they are the most marginalized people on the planet. And there is a level of that, especially because a lot of these dudes are neurodivergent, right? There's a lot of incels that have not the best mental health, all this shit, right? There are degrees of marginalization occurring. But having said that, how do you have that level of sympathy for those, right? Which I have some level of sympathy as well, and I talk about it all the time. But then when it comes to like a trans person, you're like, no, what your doctors are doing are butchering you. Like, that's crazy. You are overall such a horrifyingly awful human being when it comes to like other forms of marginalization that it's like impossible for me to take you seriously when you are talking about incels and shit. People who are asking like about the authenticity of this, right? I do think it's authentic. I think his tears are real. I don't think Jordan Peterson is like good enough of an actor to fake cry about shit. I think those tears are very much real. I do also believe that his brain is broken.
3 months of
like I think that's the reason. I think that's the reason why he's like crying real tears when he thinks about like a white weirdo kid who's like in these forums writing about like Pokemon's underwear or whatever is like the real victim of society. You know what I mean?
Round 3.
Like those are the real victims in Jordan Peterson's like ideal world. Those are the only people that are victims. You know what I mean? And I think that the reason why he feels that way is one, because he understands like where they're coming from, and two, because his brain is broken.
Do you believe you're a net force for good?
Net? Yes. In all the details? Probably not. You know, no one's perfect. So
that's why he said net.
People make their mistakes as they stumble uphill.
Jordan's been a fascinating interview.
Bro, he is weeping. There's like snot coming out of his nose. This is like, how are you going to tell me if he's like crying real tears or not? Also, it's infinitely funnier that he is crying real tears. I can't be alone in this, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here's what I think. I think incels do deserve sympathy. Controversial take, I know. Everyone does. I try to lead by empathy all the time, but there's a level to it. My empathy for you stops the moment that you start attacking other people. Especially other people over their inalienable characteristics, especially attacking people over like preconceived notions that you have about their about like whatever kind of weird stereotype you have of them in your head. And incels oftentimes are attacking a lot of other people, including myself, regularly. Okay, that's my take. That's why, you know, you catch me in a good moment and some weirdo is saying like the most unhinged shit in my chat, I'm still going to try to be like, listen, man, you can change, you can get better. I know that's going to fall on deaf ears because that person probably thinks, because of all of their preconditioning, that person probably thinks I'm being sarcastic when I say I do care about you.
So they've sold how many millions now?
Well, 12 Rules sold 7, and I think Beyond Order is approaching 1 million now. So yeah, they're doing just fine.
Did you ever think you'd sell that number of books?
I never thought any of this would happen, you know. I mean, so yeah, I knew when I was teaching at Harvard and at the University of Toronto that some of the things I was teaching were revolutionary. I was surprised that I got away with it, let's say, as long as I did. And so there's a way in which it doesn't surprise me. And I wouldn't say that's because of the brilliance of my ideas. It's because...
Dude, he's so revolutionary. He was another conservative professor at Harvard, which of course, famously, there are none. I love that. I love the notion that, like, you know, Harvard, an institution filled to the very brim with like 75-year-old neck-bearded, weird, perverted right-wing professors. Jordan Peterson was another man amongst them, teaching revolutionary things like pick yourself up by your bootstraps and communism is bad. So wild, so revolutionary. Has anyone legitimately thought that any of the things that he has ever said was considered revolutionary, like, or different or disruptive, really? Like, why? Why do we act like business school doesn't exist? Why do we act like most of these professors aren't like super right-wing? The only left-wing thought they have is that like gay people shouldn't be dissolved into a vat of acid for their moral degeneracy. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean that they're leftist, man. I'm sick and tired of this notion that like, oh man, well, these Harvard professors, they think like you shouldn't be murdered if you're trans. Oh wow, how woke are they? You know what I mean? That's crazy. Wow, so progressive. Thank you.